I went to a lot of people at that time and talked to them about, how do you start something new? How do you start over? What do you need to be? And the common theme was they were all consummate learners. They were life learners. They all like to continue to put themselves in situations where they were uncomfortable and they needed to figure out and problem solve, find solutions. And I found that I enjoyed that too.
Welcome to Microcap Moments, a podcast from Shore Capital Partners that highlights the stories of founders, investors, and leaders who have taken on the challenge of transforming ideas and small companies into high-growth organizations. The journey of building and scaling a business takes one down many unexpected pathways. It's a journey where we learn from our mistakes, fall down often, but have the entrepreneurial grit to pick ourselves up and persevere. Within this series, we will share these stories of success and failure, of the challenges and the rewards faced by those who dare to dream big. And through their lessons learned, we hope to inspire others who are on a similar journey of becoming, growing, and leading. In this episode, I talk with Scott Bullock, co-founder of iSouth. Scott brought his years of experience in hospitality and service to healthcare. Over the past 6 years, Scott has led significant growth from a 3-location business to spanning 12 states and representing over 200 ophthalmologists and optometrists with over 2,000 support staff in more than 120 locations. Throughout that journey, Scott dealt with his own challenges, learning to adapt to prepare himself to lead a rapidly growing business. Scott, I'm really excited to have you here with Anderson and I. Thank you for making time to join us today.
Thank you, Michael. It's an honor. I appreciate it.
Your journey is pretty remarkable, from golf pro to managing a significant club to transitioning into leading a growing medical practice and then on to leading one of the industry's largest companies with thousands of employees. Honestly, there's very few entrepreneurs can make that incredible leap. It requires a massive amount of self-awareness, humility, and a commitment to personal growth. Can you tell me a bit more about your journey and how you grew over time as you took on such responsibility?
Sure. Thank you. Very complimentary, so I appreciate that. Obviously not a traditional path. I graduated from Penn State University with a degree in management, but with a focus in professional golf and hospitality management. So it was a passion of mine. I was very fortunate to come out of New York State and be able to go into what I thought was my dream position of being a golf professional. As life goes, economies change. The first recession, 2008, in that area really took a hit on the golf industry. So I was looking for something else to transition into, and was very fortunate to have a lot of people around me that were invested in my career. I learned a long time ago to look at people that had walked the path before, and most people are generous, very generous with their own experiences. So I've always taken advantage of that, and the golf industry was a wonderful learning ground to do that. I worked at some of the best private clubs in the country and had exposure to CFOs and CEOs and entrepreneurs that started their own companies that were very successful in life, and they were very kind to share their path. So my MBA was 4 hours a day, 3 times a week, playing 18 holes with some very smart people. And that was a path that I didn't really understand when I was on it. But when it came time to take a leap and change careers, it seemed like that was probably the biggest asset that I had. And the logistics of the healthcare industry, coming in not knowing anything about ophthalmology and not coming in with preconceived notions about this is how it always has been and what was going on, was probably one of the best advantages I had. I had to learn everything as it was today and gave me a forward-thinking opportunity. So the transition was just being open-minded to the fact that I was never going to be the smartest person in the room, and I needed to work harder than other people around me to make sure I was catching up, which has not really stopped since this whole path through Shore and now to Olympus and watching iSouth grow to the current state that it's in. We still have a long way to go.
I love your comment that there's no better education than building relationships with really smart people and listening and learning from them. It's
absolutely
awesome.
Can you say something a little more about the role that, even though it was in the golfing or sports area, that the hospitality study played? Did that play any role in your transition, your success once you moved into healthcare?
Absolutely. And I think that's, I give a lot of credit to Dr. Gabbianelli. When I became friends with him at my last club that I worked at, he took care of my mother, who had 2 detached retinas and glaucoma, and her eyes were a mess, and he helped her save vision. But his concept was the healthcare industry was very much in need of service. And in the service industry, we talk about our clients. In the healthcare industry, we talk about our patients. In the golf industry, we talk about our members. So if you just think about those terms, patients, clients, members, a patient really doesn't have a service by anything outside of the doctor, right, or the clinical staff. So those people are medically focused and providing care, but there's very lack of service to healthcare patients. And the concept that he came up with is he wanted to create a concierge type approach to treat the patients like members or like clients and provide a little bit more of that service. That would help the brand, and the referral side of patient referrals and the brand referral would go a long way. And we focused a lot on that, being very attention to detail. We spent a whole, 2 years thinking about how we were treating the patients outside of our clinic, how we were communicating with them, how we were being responsive, not dropping calls, not dropping balls that were on there, our response, our pickup time, our call times. These were all things that are very important in the service industry that were drilled into me. I clear my email every day. I don't answer my phone when it rings. I send a text message back immediately. That immediate response was a trend that I saw my whole life, that when I got into the healthcare industry, I was quite frankly appalled by the lack of attention to that, or the lack of urgency to the response to the patients. It would seem so much more important than getting a tea time.
Terrific. Love that.
Yeah.
When you all got started, the rumor is that about 8 of you shared a tiny office with a copier, and when one got sick, everyone got sick. I remember those days myself as an early stage entrepreneur grower, and there's a lot of lessons you learned there. Could you point out 1 or 2 of your lessons learned during that early formation stage of the business?
Yeah, actually, it's a really good question, and it was a really, I cherished that time. Obviously, as I mentioned, a lot of this was new to me. I really couldn't pull on my past experience at any one of these times. So being in a small office, I actually did it twice. So we did it when I started at iSouth, but we actually did it when I started at Georgia Eye Partners. 3 of the surgeons and I and our optometrists shared a group office, 1 office, 5 desks, and the ability there just to listen to conversation, to interact, to be able to ask a question. I probably drove everybody nuts, because anybody that knows me knows I like to talk and I'm very interactive. So I think probably Rex Adams and Gino would much prefer their own office, but I took full advantage of being able to sit across the desk from Gino and then do the same thing with Rex. And I think Rex appreciated the opportunity by that time to share in the industry knowledge, the organic knowledge of the clinics and the medical side and the doctor side that was somewhat new to him in ophthalmology. So I think that share, it probably added to the length of our days because of the interaction time, but I think it was critical to the development of the team and critical to the common vision that we were building at both times in our junction.
For most of us who found and create businesses, we tend to sell vision in the early days because we really don't have much of a track record to sell. The challenge then is to deliver on all those promises. You all were no different, I think, in starting the business. How did that impact your decision-making and your commitment to deliver as you knew you were selling vision first?
Yeah, I think that is probably one of the biggest reliefs that I have after 6 years. I didn't take a lot of business classes, but I remember a few from college, and most small businesses fail within the first 5 years for a lot of different reasons. And a lot of that is because they're not being able to execute the vision. So sitting in front of the doctors and asking them to put faith in something that we're going to deliver or we're going to build or that's future facing was a very important challenge. And to me, it was the most important thing to deliver that because it's my name, it's my word. I was sitting on the other side of these doctors that spent 15 years in their study to become top of their class in one of the hardest specialties in medicine. And they've devoted their family time, their financial life, and their future basically to making sure that this partnership worked. So when they handed that trust over, I don't think there's any more important aspect of what we do than cherishing that trust and taking care of it and then being able to deliver on it. So when the doctors call me and when we were able to take this transition to Olympus and we continue to deliver best-in-class services. It's not just a financial model, it's the services that we provide to the doctors and their patients and to their staff. It's very important to me that we deliver. And I'm very proud of the fact that we've been able to have a 96% retention rate of our doctors. They're happy, 98% satisfaction rate. I talk to them daily, multiple times a day, just to make sure that the doctors are happy and that we are delivering that vision. After 6 years almost now, we can say, here's what we have done for others, here's what we can do for you. And it's, in a lot of ways, very satisfying, but also a little easier now because we can talk about what we have done. And now the challenge is how do we continue to do it and continue to do it with the same quality that we've done in the past as we scale.
We have a lot of CEOs that may come and be a part of a company that is not their previous area of expertise. I'm curious what you learned, and maybe it's evolved, being someone who was not from the healthcare industry, building the kind of early trust for those folks, even though they knew they needed some help or knew they didn't want to be dealing with accounting or HR issues, but you were a golf pro. What does it take to do that, to build that kind of trust, to become that partner, even if you initially may be seen to some degree as an outsider?
I think initially, going back even before the iSouth days, when I was at Georgia Eye Partners, I remember interviewing with two other partners, and the managing partner wanted to hire a golf pro to come run their practice. And I think they thought he was nuts. And I kind of thought he was nuts a little bit. But I think the ability level to draw parallels, and things aren't so different in life. A lot of times it's dealing with people. It's communication. It's follow through and attention to details. And in the early days, I relied on, and I still do, but to build the trust and the confidence, you have to communicate well. You have to follow up. You need to make sure that details don't fall through the cracks, so that it's one thing to make a mistake. It's a whole nother thing to make the same mistake twice. So, learning from your mistakes, helping others learn from their mistakes, building team was I knew how to build team. I always know how to build team, and I saw the importance of team. I think a medical team is something that's very second nature to the doctors. But when you think of building team and administration and support, that's not necessarily as common. So building the team on the support services was something that I started in the early days that I learned from some of my mentors. That was some of the best advice I got when I left was don't forget to build your team. And they saw that early on. And they saw that I was surrounding myself with quality individuals. And they saw that they could give something to me with confidence and I would foster it. And even though I didn't know the answer, they felt confident and I felt confident that I could figure out how to go get the right answer. And I think that's another big part. I did not know any of the answers, but I learned how to get the answers. And the answers that I found were very valuable and they were reliable.
As the company grew, you transitioned from CEO to leading the operations of what's become a massive company. I had a similar experience in my first company, and I know personally such transitions are not always easy for founders. How did you manage that, and what did you learn about yourself as you did that?
Well, being the first guy through the doors of iSouth on the administrative side, I was very proud of the fact that I was able to work with Chris and Justin to start this. I mean, Chris's vision, we talk about that vision, Chris had a lot to do with that vision. And I was very proud of the fact that they chose me to be on the administrative leadership of that. The titles don't necessarily really mean much to me. In a career standpoint, I don't remember actually ever using a resume, if you can believe that. And I'm not really looking to add something to my resume. I'm very proud of what we create. I'm a team collaborator. I think in my perfect world, I'd have a company that didn't have titles, but I know that they're important to people. But just being able to have that CEO title and understand what it was, but also understanding when Justin and Chris sat down with me and we understood what this could be, I did realize it. It took a little bit of time, to be honest. There was a little bit of redness, I guess, after I learned I wasn't going to be CEO. But after sitting into it, I realized that that wasn't what was best for the company and for the team. Rex came in, and it was an interesting and fun and valuable time in my life to really see someone like Rex, who was a polished CEO, to what the impact of that was on the other team members and what the impact was on the doctors. The company needed somebody like Rex at that point in time. And honestly, Justin said to me, it's too big. It's not a one-person job. if Justin would have made me the CEO and then would have hired a COO or a division president for operations, I would have not been as good as Rex, and whoever we hired probably wouldn't have been as good as me. So I like what I do. I actually probably am not a CEO. As I think about it 5-6 years later, that's not my skill set. And I really do enjoy the interaction, the operations, and continuing to build on the architecture side. So it was a growing period. I can say that there's probably a couple times I was thinking about leaving, exiting Stage Door. I probably wasn't, but was at that point in time. But it really, as I thought about it, the title wasn't what was important, and what we were building together was important. And I'm very glad and appreciative of how Chris and Justin and the board handled it during that time. They've always been very generous, and Justin was looking out for my future. He had a great foresight of where this was going to go.
I think that also shows a pretty massive amount of emotional intelligence on your part as well, though, to understand and see, even though it took a little time, that titles aren't nearly as important as your contribution.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. And, the emotional intelligence side, I probably would take EQ over IQ. So I think that team mentality and my contribution to those that work around me in iSouth now is continuing to foster that type of commitment to the team, and while understanding that everybody needs to do well. We want everybody to all ships to rise.
Yeah. When I asked several of your team members about you, here were some of the things they had to say. First, they describe you as passionate and you're caring about what you do, that you care about people and the company's success, and you had a laser focus on service to patients and the providers. And we've talked a bit about hospitality and how that influenced you. That's a lot of high praise, but my question is more in this direction. Often as companies grow and leaders take more responsibility, you lose sight of those things because you just get so busy in the day-to-day. You seem to have never lost sight of those. Can you talk about that a little bit and how important that is for a leader today to keep those things in perspective?
Sure. Again, I think this a lot goes back to the blocking, tackling that Rex does as CEO to really free me up to allow to do that. And I appreciate all those praises from my colleagues. It's very nice to hear. But, ultimately, that's part of why I think a CEO has to be a little bit undetached and higher above and make sure that the company is sailing in the right. My job gives me the ability to really be in the weeds as much as I need to be and really focus on the people that are around me. And I love to get into all aspects of the business, whether it's on the medical side, speaking to the doctors, or talking to the accounting and finance leaders, or going into HR. My colleagues will say, they've heard me say this, I'm always calling myself the junior HR specialist in training or the junior business development specialist in training. I love the opportunity to kind of collaborate with my colleagues. It builds the team, it builds the trust, it builds the energy, it builds the common vision. And when we're able to stay focused on those ideas and not be distracted, and there's a lot of distractions, and success breeds distractions. Change in family life breeds distractions, and there's sacrifices that have to be made. My father, he worked 6 days a week for the same company his entire life, is married still to the same woman his entire life. If you add up all those years, it's over 100 years. You look at determination and grit and being able to wake up every day and really focus on being the same person you were the day before. I think I learned a lot of that from my father. And I think you have something in the back of your head that you hear when you're not really putting 100% in. And my biggest desire is to wake up every day like I did today. I woke up an hour earlier than I needed to. I wanted to come in here and do this interview. I wanted to review the notes. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about this company. I'm excited about the people that I work with. And I don't think any of that's been watered down since we started this 6 years ago. So if you're not that excited, it's probably time to go.
So true. It's the driving force, I think, of every leader. If you aren't the most excited person in the building, you probably should move on.
It's probably time. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Over the next portion of our discussion, Anderson asked Scott how he transformed his own leadership style from leading by engaging each person individually to leading through others. There's so much insight here as Scott shares that part of his story.
Scott, let me ask you just a follow-up on that. As someone who is a high-touch, high-relationship person, high EQ, former golf pro, you working one-on-one in that place, 8 people in a room when you get this thing started. How have you managed to scale that ability as well as that need for you as the company has grown to make that part of the spirit of the larger company, but also to keep feeding you as you're not within an arm's reach of everybody anymore. You're not even in the same time zones as people anymore. How has that scaled for you?
It's a great question. It's very challenging because every day this is the biggest company I've ever worked for, and the responsibilities generally are bigger today than they were yesterday. And then as the division grew, I'm over 12 states now. I have 8 regional directors, marketing reports up to me, and I'm leading doctor recruiting, and we're kicking off a clinical research division that I'm leading. There's just not enough time in the day to get deep into that. So you really have to rely on the people. And I watched what Rex did about hiring really good people, and the board gave me the opportunity to go out and hire regional directors. And I've got a team of regional directors now that are the best ophthalmology leadership in the country. And they have 200, 300 years of ophthalmology and business experience. And now I'm more really focused on being kind of a consultant in the door so that they can be successful in their operational goals. So I went from more telling people what to do to, hey, what do you need me to do so that you can be successful? There's not an infinite number of problems that we have to solve. There's a really finite number of problems. And if you can identify the top 20 or 30 of those and really have a great playbook for it, then it just becomes knowing who to go to, what to give, and then how to execute. I miss some of that clinical. I miss some of that interaction. But the best use of my time is really focusing on probably about 10 or 15 people that some I report to me and others that I want to be collaborative with to help them, develop.
Scott, what you just described in scaling is going from the lead player on the field to the coach.
Sure. That makes sense. Right. Yeah.
And it's
right.
very clear what you're doing is leading through others now and coaching them to the behaviors that you would have done yourself if you could.
Right. Exactly. Sometimes to be a good coach, you probably have to remind them that you were a good player. And they educate me on the changes every day. I don't want to get stale, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And one of the things when I came into ophthalmology 14, 15 years ago, I felt there was a lot of stale thought around me. So just trying to continue to challenge myself, challenge them, challenge what we're doing. I like to blow things up, put them back together, and make sure that they're working better than what we had them.
Speaking of blowing things up, going through the pandemic of COVID-19 was probably one of the most pivotal moments when you all had to make some really hard decisions to ensure the long-term success and viability of the business. I know you spent a lot of time on the phone with doctors. You probably extended your trust badge as far as you possibly could stretch it. Tell us about that journey and what you learned through that.
Absolutely. It's funny. I think back on it, it was really about 3 months, which today, 3 months goes by in a snap. But those 3 months seemed like 3 years to a lot of us that were trying to understand what was going on. My attitude is that in life, some of the worst things that you think happen to you are probably the most influential and benefit you the most. And as hard as COVID was, and the lives that we lost, and the disruption that it did to our country and to the world and to our families, I feel very fortunate to have taken some life lessons away from that, and really am proud of iSouth and how they were able to work. It actually proved our model in a weird way, or in a different way. I don't want to sound overly proud of that period, but if you think about it, we were 2 years old. A lot of people we were growing so fast, and everybody was trying to catch up. And then when the world stopped, we had to rethink about the business. We had to rethink about survival of the business, and we had to really focusing what the doctors and patients, how we could make sure to prioritize what their needs were. We did not want to lose vision during that time, and we had to really think about the acuteness of care and the primary vision. A lot of doctors were sacrificing their own health to continue to help a lot of these patients. So it became really seriously, like people could die in this situation. So I think everybody felt that pressure. We went down to 12% of our business on our anterior division, and our posterior retina doctors continued to operate at about 75%, which had a whole different type of risk profile for staffing and the doctors, and having to perform under COVID when nobody knew initially how contagious or how it was happening. So our communication that happened during that period was absolutely as good as I've ever seen it. We started having Monday, Wednesday, Friday, almost open sessions. All the administration, clinical doctors, we invited anyone that wanted to listen in to be on that call. And we presented 20, 30-page presentations 3 times a week with current updates. And I think the doctors really appreciated that. We had to make some hard financial decisions. I forget the total number of doctors at that time, but it was north of 150. Every single one of them signed an amendment to their contract, giving basically money back to the company so we could keep going, understanding they were basically putting faith in the fact that we were going to take care of them and this was going to work out well. And I think that was a very generous move on our doctors. But we needed our physician advisory board and our board doctors to help us.
And what a test to actually live your mission and your values every single day as you're going through something like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Michael. And part of that vision that we were selling to the doctors, I think after COVID, we started for the first time to talk about this is what we have done rather than this is what we're going to do. In a lot of situations, it built trust and bonds with our doctors, our clients. We are servicing these practices in our management company.
I think what's interesting about that is you talked about it proving your model and proving your value. But I think when you hear that your physicians were willing to step up, right, from a financial perspective to protect the health of the company, you had already proven those things.
I think you're right. And the fact that the doctors and we had established that trust, I think was very important.
And it showed that they valued the company. You know, doctors are strong individual contributors, very single-minded in many ways. And for that moment, they said, the company is bigger than me. The company has meaning to me, and I'm going to sacrifice personally for the company.
I think that's right. And being a doctor-led company and having our board with 9 doctors, 8 doctors on the board, having our physician advisory board, our optometry advisory board. I talk today a lot with our new doctors that are coming in, and the balance of making sure they're always going to be a doctor-led company. You see the value of that through hard times. We never want our doctors, our partners, to feel like they're being employees. I love the fact that we have 65-70% of our doctors are owners of this company, and owners acted like owners at that time, and owners make sacrifices. So it's a really good point.
While we're on the topic of sacrifice, building such a business also requires a bit of personal sacrifice for you and your family. You talked about your father's 6-day work week. You clearly got his work ethic, but I know personally it can take a toll on you and your family as well. How have you managed? What are some lessons you've learned there? And where are you today on that versus where you were?
Great question. And my wife, Andrea, and I have been married 25 years here in a couple months, so really proud of that. And Patrick, Shannon, I have 23, 21 years old. In the golf industry, I worked almost every weekend and holidays. The biggest reason I left the golf industry was my kids were 8 and 10, and I kind of had a revelation that my health wasn't that great, and I wasn't really a great father or husband. Golf was a very selfish business. So when I left the golf business and went into healthcare, I had all these weekends and holidays off and actually took a vacation or 2 back in the early days. And it was great to be there for my family. So I think that was the first step of saying, hey, look, I'm on the right side of this now and I can be present. I did realize that it doesn't matter what industry I was in. Part of my DNA is I enjoy working, and I've never really felt like there's work and there's off time. I look at my phone quite often, and I enjoy being engaged. Probably not the best family person because of that, and it definitely does take away from the family time. I'm trying to do better. I actually will put the phone down a little bit on the weekends now, and when we go on vacation, I try to stay in the moment. I do think the selflessness of my wife, my kids understand who I am. I probably won't win the Father of the Year award or the Husband of the Year award, but I think they understand and support the commitment that I have to this company. They understand how important it is to me of what we've built and what we're trying to do. And just like my father taught me, and I hope I pass it on to my children, you got one run through this life, and you want to be a very good person and a father and a spouse or a mother. But if you're not satisfied with who you are, it's hard to really be satisfied to those that are around you. And I think I'm at a really good point now. I think there's a lot of fun and excitement that this breeds to the family when you're successful too. So I think they get energized. They see how happy I am and how proud I am, and they take pride in it too because they sacrificed a lot.
Sure. One of my personal mottos is there's no dress rehearsal in life. We only get one shot, so we better make it count. It sounds like you've maximized that and found for your own family a healthy way that you integrate your work and your personal life together that works for everyone.
Yeah, probably, again, I'm not going to say that's one of my strengths. It's probably an area that I'm always going to continue to work on. But looking back on our children and how healthy and happy they are, somehow it worked out. I'll give a lot of credit to my wife. She probably had more impact on that than I did. But she's just been such a strong person and an influence on this. So I think that network of support is critical. And you can't be successful outside the house if you're not successful inside the house, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Takes a village.
Yeah, it does.
So just to wrap up, I want to make sure as you think about your story and your journey with iSouth, before iSouth, and even moving into the future, what haven't we talked about that you want to make sure we capture for that story, for who you are in this story?
Again, I think the one thing that maybe we haven't covered is the opportunity that they take developing people like me that don't have those skills, but they took a lot of risk, and I'm very thankful for it. It gave me kind of that motivation to run in every day. And I know they like to take operational people that are in their microcap companies and help them develop. I think that's a real commendable attribute to the Shore model. And I think there's a lot of aptitude in these individuals, including myself, that probably wasn't fully developed and so the patience that Chris Miaton had for me, I probably drove Chris nuts in the first couple of years and probably still do in some ways, but we developed a really great relationship, and the respect that I have for him and the patient level that he showed us. So I think that's a quality that a lot of the people in my shoes from the other portcos really enjoy. And I've always felt that, and they've helped us find a new capital partner, which I still feel that exudes that same. Olympus Partners it's early, it's been a couple months, but I feel the same concept and philosophy that they hold. So, and that's reassuring to us that are leading the company. It's reassuring to the doctors that we're able to continue to roll on that same culture.
This podcast was produced by Shore Capital Partners with story and narration by Michael Burcham. Recording and editing by Andrew Malone. Editing by Real Audiobooks. Sound design, mixing, and mastering by Mark Galloop of Real Audiobooks. Special thanks to Scott Bullock for telling his story, and to Anderson Williams, who shared in the interview. This podcast is the property of Shore Capital Partners, LLC. None of the content herein is investment advice, an offer of investment advisory services, nor a recommendation or offer relating to any security. See the Terms of Use page on the Shore Capital website for other important information.